I remember days they used to laugh at me. Used to show them on my record something casually. Used to say it was a passion on my path to be. Then they told me that I couldn't, so I had to be. Tell me what they really think about it now. Used to hate it, but I guarantee they're proud. Had to do it just to show them that I could, yeah. Now I finally think I took it where I should, yeah. Had a jokes on you and now you're on and laughing. I did a whole lot of winning. Look, it came from a passion. I see a whole lot of no ones I could see now in public. And that may think a lot of things, man. At least think something, now you the judge. Hey, now tell me where you ended up. Yeah. Look, I bet it was a simple job. Yeah. Look, I went and took a different route. Yeah. Look, that's why my life is different now. Back in my feelings, look, when I wasn't so gifted and I was learning to do this, and all I heard were the critics, and I don't blame you for that shit. Look, I was way out the basis, but I just needed some talent so I could wait this to greatness. Oh yeah, you ain't ever think this, no, no, no. Stop me while I started, homie, whoa, whoa, whoa. Now this shit settled, it's go better and better, but I'll always remember, yeah, yeah.
All right, Melissa, welcome to That One podcast. This has been a dream of mine, and it's actually a pleasure to have you as the first guest. We did an interview on the What Are You Made Of show, and that was virtual, so we didn't really get to meet. And, you know, I think there's something to be said about being in person. The energy and everything's different. And I just wanted to have a chat with you on That One podcast, and we're going around touring the country. LA happens to be our first stop, and it's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and also I want to thank you because you trusted us at That One as well to start getting your message out further. And, you know, I was talking about earlier how when I started building my brand, that it was all about C-Roc and all this, and I was trying to blow this thing up. And then it came to me one day, and I was praying, and it came to me one day that I got to start helping other people, you know, like being the catalyst, because then the impact that I can have is exponential. And people like you, like I wake up in the morning, like just blessed and honored based on the story, which we'll share today, to be able to get your message out further.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's an honor, and I'm humbled by it. So, all right, so let's get into it. So you came from Venezuela, and you have a book that came out, which is sitting here, Hidden Memories. And people need to read this book because when she was sharing some of the stories with me, when you were sharing some of the stories with me, my mouth dropped. I was just like, I can't believe that. And I think we all go through things in life, and we think that our story is like the worst thing ever. And then we hear somebody else's story, and we're like, oh my goodness, I couldn't even imagine going through something like that. So, and part of the story is what makes you that one. And just to clarify, that one means leaning into all the things we've been through, bad, good, our quirkinesses, our weirdness, our coolness, whatever, and not running from it and hiding from it, but really leaning into it unapologetically, right? So can you kind of share where you came from?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I was born in Venezuela. My parents are from Spain, and I had an interesting childhood. Venezuela is very dangerous. It was challenging to be there. I worked since I was a little girl. I enjoyed working, but as many people, I also wanted to make my parents proud. And I learned early that my dad will be proud of me if I was good at work and good at school. So I started working when I was young, and due to combination of factors, some dramatic, some really difficult times in my teenage years, I ended up coming to the U.S. with my dog and 2 suitcases. Almost got deported at the airport. And I started my life in the U.S., which was full of challenges. But I'm so blessed to call the U.S. home now. Yeah,
see, I had some family troubles in the U.S. We always had money. We always had food to eat. We always had... You know, I had a loving parent, at least one, but it was tough childhood. But I can't imagine trying to go to a new country, learn new customs and culture and all the things. Now, also, this has to give you a kind of different perspective of what we hear all the time. Not to get into politics necessarily, but like the mass amount of people coming from different countries into the United States. And obviously, most of them are good, I believe, and what they must be going through.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people talk about countries in the Middle East, and the migrants getting into Europe. But not many people talk about people from Venezuela, for example, who are leaving the country not because they want to. They don't want to leave their families. They don't want to leave their land and their homes. Many people that are coming from Venezuela have degrees. They have had businesses, and they're coming to the U.S. and they're contributing, and they're becoming just, maybe the person that drives a car, or they cut your grass. So they are downgrading their lifestyle because they're looking for security. They are trying to preserve their lives. And of course, there is the other side of the coin where a lot of people also come with bad intentions, and that's a difficulty of immigration. Right,
yeah. I mean, I always try to look at the good in things. When we see the media, everything's so bad, and it's fear and negative, and it's like they thrive on chaos, and I just want to see through all that. And it's really good to meet people that have come from different countries that have experienced some of that. So now, before you got to the United States, there were some things that happened in your life as a child. And I would love for you to share some of that, if you don't mind. I know some of it might be difficult. You wrote about it in the story of your book, and I know writing a book can be therapeutic. Was it therapeutic for you?
Oh, it was absolutely 100% therapeutic.
And difficult to go through some of the stuff?
Very difficult.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it for people, though. Even if you're not planning to publish a book, sit down and recount your life. Starts with your parents' life, whatever you can remember, whatever they can tell you. It's very healing. So when I was writing my book, I literally was shaking and vibrating and crying all throughout because all the emotions are just coming out and they're being processed. But it was magical because sometimes I feel like there are parts in the book that I almost predicted how I will feel in the near future because I close loops in the book, and then I actually go through life, face similar challenges, and then I reread my book and I'm like, oh wow, how I'm feeling now is more fully how I thought I was feeling when I wrote the book. But you start healing in pieces.
Yeah, I talk to my kids a lot about completing cycles.
Yes.
Because if you leave too many cycles incomplete, then chaos starts to fester.
Yeah.
And then you have to go back and assess, okay, what loops, right? What cycles are left incomplete, and close those. And then it actually lightens you.
Yes, exactly. Life goes in cycles always, right? Like you're mentioning. And, until we close a cycle or a loop, we seem to be facing the same difficulties, attracting the same kind of problems, the same kind of people. But you're right. Once we're able to have the courage and do the work to close cycles, which involves a lot of letting go. And many times we focus on letting go of that guy or that woman or that job. But I've discovered that one of the most important pieces to close cycles is to let go of an old version of ourselves that belonged in that cycle.
Wait a minute. So this goes into forgiveness.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about forgiveness, a lot of times we think about other people, forgiving other people for what they've done, right? Or, if you believe in God, you forgive God because God, I can't believe God put me through that. But you're talking about too, forgiving yourself.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. One of the most disruptive emotions that we can carry with us is guilt and shame.
Yeah.
So when we are compassionate and we forgive ourselves, then we're able to really let go of guilt and shame and let go of the version of ourselves that was feeling so low and of so little value that allowed different people or different cycles to be in their lives.
Yeah. So can you get into some specifics of prior to getting to the United States?
Yes. Well, I'll start with something that happened when I was 3 years old. My eldest brother got diagnosed with cancer.
And how old was he at the time?
He was 19.
Okay.
My mother had to leave for the U.S. with him. So I lost my mom basically for 2.5 years, which left me at home with my other siblings and my father. There's a whole story there, but I will touch now on the part of my brother because a lot of people go through death, and I think it's a very healing perspective. So
by the way, I don't mean to cut you off, but when you were 3, do you have the memories of 3? Because I don't know if I have many memories when I was 3.
So I didn't have any memories of my childhood, not from birth, until I was 16 years old.
Oh my God.
Which is, I was not versed in mental health. I talked to my family a couple of times about it. We didn't know why. We came up with some ideas, but not scientific. And one of the reasons why I wrote my book is because I really want to make people aware that when you don't remember your childhood, when you have large memory gaps, it means that your brain hit something for protection, and it usually hides as a bulk because of the way the science of the brain works. So it will hide years, it will hide good memories and bad memories. So when I'm talking to you about these experiences of my brother's illness and all of that, I know what I know from pictures, watching pictures, and also from talking to my family, obviously. So my brother gets sick when I'm 3 years old. My mom leaves to help him, comes to the U.S. I see my mom maybe for a week every 3 to 6 months. So there is the abandonment wound that I didn't know I have that came from that. And my brother died ultimately when I was almost 6 years old. I was 10 days short of my birthday. And as many families, we disappeared him from our lives. I don't know if you've noticed, sometimes family lose family members and they pretty much try to erase the memory. They don't talk about them. Yeah. They hide the pictures. Because
it hurts too bad.
Yes. They give away the clothing. So they just disappear the person. And it was so effective, this disappearing act, that I actually never even thought about my brother until I was 33 years old. And on one evening, I was sitting by a palm tree, and I felt like the fronds of the palm tree in my face, and I removed them. And I remember that, and this was a memory, that he used to put like my hair in front of my face, and I will remove it. And he will do it over and over again. And in that moment, I remember him, and it was with such an open heart that I realized, I didn't think that he had influenced me, but he did. So I've always had a fire inside of me. I've lived with a zest for life. And I've realized that it's in great measure because I experienced the loss of a young life so early during mine. So, that was one of the things that happened in my childhood.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, it hits me hard too because I'm the oldest of all my brothers and sisters. And I always like to mess with my sisters too, but like it was doing it out of love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then sometimes, I have a daughter now too, and I mess with my daughter similar to the way I mess with my sisters. But it just made me think about like my daughter just turned 12 yesterday, and I decided to be on the road. We celebrate. We don't worry about the dates of things. We celebrate when we celebrate, but still, my wife put a video up of my daughter when she was a baby until she was grown up. And it just, when you were talking about your brother messing with your hair, it just reminds me of like, just that interaction that you have with your family members, especially, younger ones. And really taking it all in at that moment versus like, there's so many times where I think that we're like in this mode of like almost hypnotized and we don't really appreciate the moments, And so that moment came back to you under the palm tree.
Yeah.
And yeah, man. And so what happened I guess when you're 33, then what happened after that? Like, did you start having memories come back more? Did you like start thinking about it more, or how did it affect you?
Well, so from that event, fast forward to when I was 16, my father is murdered in Venezuela. Robbery, gang gone bad. So that's when I leave the U.S. and I start a new life. And
so wait a minute, you were still in Venezuela when it happened?
Yeah, when my father was murdered.
Yeah.
So I actually graduated high school a little bit earlier. So about 4 months after his death, I graduated from high school and I left.
Okay.
I came to Miami and I started life here. Got a business. I eventually married the tall and handsome guy, and just try to.
Why does he got to be tall?
Listen, I'm pretty tall.
I know, I'm messing with you. That was a little inside joke because when people meet me for the first time, they're like, "Dude, I thought you were a lot taller than that." But yeah, no, you have what? How tall are you?
5'9".
Okay, and she walks in with heels today, so she's like 6'1".
Yeah, about.
And, I say, "Hey, Melissa." No, it's awesome though. But yeah, so he tall, dark, and handsome guy. And
yeah, so
did you say dark? I don't know.
Not dark. He's sweet. He's
I figured
Swedish,
Miami.
So.
Okay, I figured Miami. He's got. Okay. Anyway.
So like I basically tried to live the life. Mm-hmm. I tried to be successful, which I was, the way that the world defines success. I had the marriage. I had all of these things. I had the money, traveled the world, but there was a complete sense of disconnection and unhappiness, and I felt. Absolutely and 100% not normal.
Yeah.
Like I felt broken. I lacked maternal instinct. I couldn't even love the people around me. I really didn't have a good marriage at all. So ultimately, that led me down a very dark, road where I ended up getting very happily divorced and then getting involved with men that, unknowingly, they triggered terrible fears of rejection in me, and they triggered a horrible lack of self-worth. And it was that which made me question for the first time what's going on here. Because one guy, okay, I can blame him.
No, but like, let's get more specific. Like, what kind of things would they do, or what were you attracting?
I mean, so have you heard of like attachment styles?
Yeah.
And okay, so we have anxious, we have avoidant, and we have secure, right? As the main ones. There is another one that is less recognized and is very important, but I'll focus on anxious and avoidant. So I fears of rejections will really bring an anxiety inside of me that I will chase this man because I needed to be loved.
Gotcha.
I needed to be chosen.
So like clingy,
not trusting, clingy.
Okay.
And really, when you have that, it's because you don't love yourself, you don't trust yourself, so you're looking for that outside of yourself. But then here's the interesting part. Then the coin will flip. And if a guy was interested in me, I will run. And I wouldn't care about that person. And I'll be like a Jamaican sprinter, and I was out of there.
Gotcha.
So the dynamic was driving me insane. And why is that? There is a fourth recognized attachment style people don't talk too much about that is called disorganized. So this organized attachment style happens when you have had a very traumatic childhood, full of mixed messages. Not only that maybe my mother left when I was a little girl and there was the abandonment issue, but what else happened in my childhood that I have this tendency of a push and pull? Because it's like it's a Jackson Pollock painting. It's a mess.
Yeah.
Life is a mess when you have a disorganized attachment style.
So I was actually just reading something. I had some time to myself yesterday. And so I decided to read. and I was reading something that was talking about reverse vectors, which means that you have a vector. It's like how far a direction something's going and how fast it's going. And in life, there's vectors, reverse vectors, like a push and pull, like you were just talking about. And what I'm sure what we'll hear, some of the work you've done on yourself and the studying you've done, you start to realize that in our bodies here on Earth and physical nature, there's a lot of reverse vectors like that. And then when you start to heal yourself, it's not as much. So yeah, that intrigues me because I was just reading about that. And as a youngster, when I was a young man, and I was dating girls, and my wife especially, she went off to college, and I felt like that. Like I would call her all the time, where are you? All this, and I didn't like being like that, but it probably stemmed from my childhood.
Yeah.
And I wasn't working on myself at that time, Yeah. So when everything changed for me was when I started working on myself and being more confident and loving myself and being okay, being that one, right?
Yeah.
Then I was like, cool, you're going to go out, let me know if you need help or be safe, that kind of thing. And it was like so much more relaxing.
Yeah.
So you dealt with that. And so, but the guys, let me go back for a second to your husband. As the husband is in this and you're dealing with the things you're dealing with, I'm sure he was feeling like he was doing something wrong.
Well, as with everything, all dynamics in couples are very complex. And depending on what you believe or not, I believe we attract people that can work as mirrors for us, and they can be teachers, and we can be teachers for them. And there are no coincidences. So my ex-husband and I were meant to come together so we could both trigger each other a lot in different ways. So, it takes two to tango. It takes two for a relationship to work or not to work. But just to make it, as simple as possible, we were only good at one thing, and that one thing was making money.
Yeah.
So there was no connection. There was either because I couldn't express it or because he didn't know how to express the love and the connection. So we both had different issues, but that's not my story. His story is not my story to tell.
Right.
So I can only focus on how I felt during the marriage. And, something that I really do want to point out because it's important is the idea that we all have patterns. We all have patterns. So don't focus so much if you just do one thing one time. You could have been having a bad day. But the key is pay attention to the things that are repeating in your life. Like when people talk about, this always happens to me. I'm always attracting the wrong guy. I'm like, okay, this is a message for you, because you are the common factor.
Right.
Like in all these wrong guys, it's you. So finally, at one point, I had this realization. I was like, oh, what does all of these have in common? It's me. Like, these people are all different.
Now, was it attracting those guys? Were you also attracted to the wrong guys?
Well, it's either, right? I'm attracted to the wrong guys, and they're coming into my life because it's that polarity. And honestly, using the word wrong might be too judgmental. I'm just attracting men and being attracted to men that will trigger my childhood fears. Yep. Because it's it's a familiar hell. So we are more comfortable in a familiar hell than an unfamiliar heaven. I don't know if you've heard of that saying, but it's true.
That's deep.
So, I will feel emotions in my body and in my heart that were familiar because I lived in that hell when I was a kid. So even though they were not healthy, they were comfortable. Mm-hmm. And, almost like I will be addicted to suffering until very recently, Mike. After all the work I've done, and I think people can identify with this. Sometimes when things are going well in your life, you will find ways to suffer. You will be addicted to the suffering or the problems. You will look for problems. And I know maybe some people look for them to grow, but a lot of times you're just looking for them so your nervous system can feel as it did when you were a kid and
secure,
you were and you were distressed, So these men show up. And finally, I get my heart broken because I actually fall in love with one of them for the first time in my life, which I completely, talking about being rattled, falling in love with someone for the first time when you're in your 30s, okay? So I end up flying to Costa Rica and drinking a psychedelic medicine, a plant medicine called ayahuasca. And it was really life transformative. It first destroyed my life in an instant. All aspects of me, my identity disappeared. And it's been the most horrible instant of my life. But then, thankfully, because I accepted that destruction, I was able to start building a new foundation that was lasting. Yeah. And it's not a magic pill. None of these treatments or psychedelics. Right. It's not
like you just went back home and then everything was fine.
No. It's not a magic pill.
It's an exercise. Like, you got to work a muscle.
Yeah. Like if I compare it to any pill, I talk in my book, it will be to the red pill Neo takes in the Matrix, which opens up his knowledge of what's really going on in the Matrix and the world. And then he has to face the monsters and he almost dies. So it's like that with any personal development path, whether it's with psychedelics or what meditation or whatever you're using, whatever tools work for you, it's about the path, and it's never a straight line, So Costa Rica was a pivotal time in my life, and it was less than 3 years ago.
Oh, that recent?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right. So I also know in the book that you have something about U2 in the book a lot. And you showed me some pictures earlier, and it wasn't just one time, but you're on stage, and apparently you became like a road, not I want to say a roadie, not a roadie, but like you were like following them around, right?
I was a total groupie.
Yeah,
I accept it.
Okay.
I take
wasn't gonna say that.
responsibility.
Okay. Well, okay. So then, like, how did that all take place? Like, how did you decide, like, because when you do that, you pretty much, I think you mentioned this, like, you basically figured out how to live between concerts, right?
Yeah.
and then the concert's coming, and I'm off to the road again, and I'm,
So this one is one that is hard to explain to many people, and I get why, and I get it even more now, because, like, I've been to more than 100 U2 concerts in my life.
100? Oh my God.
100 in 20 years. I've seen them in all continents, in India, in Australia, in Asia. I've seen them everywhere. But here's the key. Their music was like a lifeline for me. Mm-hmm. So no, I was not having a crush on Bono. No, it was not about that. Their music became a lifeline. And if I'm honest, it became a little bit of an obsession or even an addiction where you just
ask if
craving.
It was healthy.
It was very healthy, but there is also a line that can be crossed when you cannot function outside of that environment, right?
Right.
So it was a lifeline for me, their music. They tour every 4 years. My life went in 4-year cycles. And It just happened that the lowest points will happen when they will tour. So I will tour and I will be in a low point. I will come up out of that hole, start breathing again. The tour will end and I will barely survive, but I knew the next tour will come in 4 years. And I know it sounds obsessive, and it is in a little bit, but hey, we all have different coping tools. I'm not judging myself. I'm not judging anybody that has their own tools, you know?
Yeah.
So I went to many different shows and I saw them play, and, you know, and it was just, their shows were the place where I felt more like myself. That's the way to explain it. In their shows was the only place where I felt like I do now in my normal life. So a lot of my friends from that world...
Because it's a community that develops,
right? We're like hundreds of people. I've seen people get married, have children, get divorced.
And was there a group chat set up and all WhatsApp or
no, I mean, with a few. I'm not super involved in the community. I would show up for the shows and usually from the lines for it because of my control freak issues. But there's a whole community of these. You know, but it was very healing. It was very healing for me, and I still love their music, and I'm super grateful for what they did for me personally, and I know many people whose lives have been touched by you too as well.
Yeah. Well, I think I had that before with football, with golf. So I had the same kind of thing. You know, I do. I mean, I'm trying to think of something with music concerts that you know, we went to a lot of Dave Matthews bands back in the day, and all that. Now my daughter's obsessed with Morgan Wallen.
Right.
Morgan Wallen. She said she didn't want to be in the country, but I proved her wrong. So I just started playing the music all the time, and now she like sings it. So, but yeah.
You know, let me touch on something that's interesting because I have noticed that on myself. So, Gabor Mate is a super duper great trauma physician, and he says that the brain changes. The brain gets wired for addiction. Okay, so throughout my life, I've been an addict. I've been an addict of different things. You know, first when I was little, it was, you know, certain habits or things that I will do. Then it became music. It became the high of music, you know, chasing this band around. Then it was food. I was bulimic for a long time. Then it came alcohol and, you know, or substances, and not drugs. I actually never did drugs, but alcohol, I became dependent on it. Then it's social media, you know, so we're all wired for addiction in our brains because we all have different coping tools, right? So it's not about judging it, but it's about recognizing it and then taking small steps to be able to improve. And awareness, self-awareness is key.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I've really worked on, and I noticed a difference in being able to control things with self-awareness. Like if I'm off track, getting back on track faster.
Yeah, you know, I actually like to explain self-awareness as looking at yourself in the mirror. So you're standing in the mirror, but instead of looking at your facial, you know, characteristics or your body, you're actually staring back into your emotions, into your patterns, into your identity. And instead of like fixing my hair or how is my makeup, you're starting to kind of, okay, I don't want to have this pattern of emotion. Let me start to modify it. Let me move this here, see if it feels better. And that self-awareness is to be able to reflect, to look at yourself, back into yourself and do something about it.
Yeah, and so how do you feel now about your body and like after being bulimic and all that? I mean, you stay in shape, obviously. Like, are you comfortable with yourself now?
Yeah. So and I don't want to sound cliche, but I have learned to really love myself and love my body and working on it and being careful with it. You know, bulimia is one of those trauma coping tools that we don't talk about enough. Anorexic people, you can tell clearly that they're having some sort of issue because they lose a lot of weight, they don't want to eat. But bulimics, they can really hide it. And I have a chapter where I talk about this in the book because you know, anybody can be a bulimic and you don't know it. Any teenager that you see, even if they have regular weight for their size and age and everything, they can be bulimics. So, you know, at one point in my life, I was forcing myself to vomit up to 8 times a day. You know, it's not about the food. I will buy, I didn't have money at that time, so I will buy a loaf of white bread and just eat it. And then vomit. Why? Because it mimics a sense of control. You're controlling that you can put this into your body and you feel better. And then it's an emotional release. The actual vomiting is an emotional release that you're experiencing. So it's similar to why people will cut themselves or have scabs that they continually scratch.
Yeah.
It's a form of addiction that is just trying. Your body is just screaming for help. Your psyche is screaming for help. Your mind is in pain, and that's the way to be able to soothe yourself. But there is always an underlying reason.
All right, now let's talk about tattoos.
Yeah.
Because you have one on your leg.
I have 17 tattoos.
And I saw one on your finger.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the deal? Like, I know I got some tattoos, and I even had some covered up. And then because at the time it seemed cool, right? And then it was like, oh, why did I get that?
Right.
So tell us like your tattoo journey, like where did it start, and then was there some regrets?
Well, I have very, very meaningful tattoos. I have a couple that are not so meaningful.
Yeah.
My leg one is not meaningful. I'm just gonna say it. It's just
decorative.
It's just decoration, man. Specific for certain occasions.
Yeah.
But so they're reminders for me. A lot of them are reminders. For example, this one is a special one that I got right after my divorce. And
so for those listening on the podcast, it's a basically elbow, just below the elbow.
See. There
some
it
birds
is.
And some writing.
Yeah, so the writing is inspired by you too, and it says, free yourself to be yourself. So something interesting has happened with tattoos. I realized that your subconscious mind can sometimes talk to you about what's important enough that you put on your body. Because when I tattooed these, I had no clue what I needed to free myself from, but I knew there was something that I needed to free myself from so I could be me. And cue the experience in Costa Rica where I remember my childhood, and I realized that I had been living in chains. Both chains have been placed upon me, and chains that I had placed upon me myself. So the journey of freedom now is being tattooed on my body from way before I embarked on it. And I'm just so grateful for, the experience. And I have a couple of tattoos that are actually like that.
So, when you say that, it's funny because I have this stupid one here. I think it's stupid now because I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't say that really because it's more dark. Like it's nothing fancy, but it like looks like a dead tree.
It does look a little bit like a dead tree.
I don't know if you guys can see on the camera here. I'll show my muscles here. No, but when I was during that time, I was in a lot of partying, and when I wasn't around my friends and the community, it was dark. Like if I was by myself, I'd hated being by myself. Like if I was out in the living room watching TV and my buddies were in their rooms because we'd rent a house or whatever together, I'd always be like, hey guys, come out, hang out with me, because it was like I didn't like being by myself. I felt dark. So it's funny that you said your subconscious speaks to you, and then. Oh man, this is crazy. I never thought of it that way. Because I have a tattoo on this arm, and it's a Michelangelo painting, and it's these people looking up, and like to God. It's I think the Sistine Chapel, and they're looking up because God's coming down, right? And I have it here looking up at me, not as I'm God, but like because I wanted to be a speaker when I got this, and I wanted people to pay attention to what I was saying. Jeez, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
I never thought of that before.
So yeah, I'm getting goosebumps just like here. Yeah.
Holy cow, man.
It's very interesting. Even right after I left Costa Rica and I had started to recover, memories of my childhood that were very shocking and incredibly traumatic, much worse than I even let in the book, because it's an inner journey, right?
Yeah.
But I got this tattoo. Remember who you are. I just kept on saying during the treatments, remember who you are, remember who you are. And it has changed meanings so much. At first I thought, remember, you're just a happy, innocent girl. And then it just transitioned into, remember, you're just like this beautiful soul that is having this experience now and that can just influence and help and impact way beyond yourself. So the act, I think, the main thing us humans really have to do when we're alive is not to learn stuff. It's just to remember our essence, to everything is stored within us. We are part of God, right? Everything is stored. So it's the remembering by removing the layers that society has placed upon us. So this is also a beautiful tattoo. It's just remember who you are.
Well, some people get tattoos they can't see anymore. Like I have something on my back, I can't even see it, and I forget that I have it. So I don't know why I got it.
I have a
But
U2
how am I
lyric
supposed
going
to-
down.
Oh, really? Yeah, but how are we supposed to remember that? Like, what? I'm checking myself out in the mirror. Yeah. So as we wind down here, I want to talk about your mission now and what you want to do for people and how you want to impact this world by being that one. And if you don't mind sharing, like, what's your mission now, and what do you really like see going forward? What's the vision, and especially the impact? Because I think it's important. Like, we do work, whatever we choose to do, whether it's our hobbies and our communities, what have you. But it's really the impact that we leave behind, right?
So many times in our lives, we face difficulties and we get over them. And that's it. We got over them. Other times we face difficulties and we get over them. And when we're on this other side, we have this calling to say, hey, I need to help many more people get over to this side. So for me, the transformation of my life has been so incredible. Not easy, but so incredible from who I used to be when I didn't remember what happened to me to who I am today. Now I remember what happened to me, and I've been able to process it and get the emotions out of my body. The transformation was so big, and I realized that it is so common, Mike, for the brain to hide trauma and for traumatic episodes to happen behind closed doors of happy homes, that I decided I wanted to transmute what happened to me into something valuable for people. First, starting with a book that is pretty much, I opened the windows to my soul. And I said to the people, look inside to the most difficult times and just hopefully get something out of it by comparing it to your life, by, seeing how you can also grow. So it's the book, which is a beautiful book. It's in Audible and it's on Amazon. And then I love talking about mental health, trauma healing. And also a big part is to help remove some stigma from psychedelic use for therapeutic purposes. I'm not pushing psychedelics on people. I'm simply giving knowledge. So people, I'm a firm believer that people have the right to choose the healthcare that works for them. And right now, the way that the world is set up, people are only having one choice, and that's what's the insurance covering. And it's not fair.
Yeah.
It's not fair. So removing stigma from psychedelics, mental health, trauma healing, how the brain hides traumatic episodes, by speaking about it and by putting my book out there.
So, all right. So, where can people get the book? I guess Amazon, or where do you want to send it?
So it's on Amazon. You have Amazon Kindle, and you will have it also in paperback. For the hardcover, you have to contact me directly, either on my website, which is melissa-osorio.com, or my Instagram, which is melissa_Osorio_remembers. I'm sure it will be, put on here. And, I'm always sharing on Instagram a lot of tips and tools. And that's not because I'm such, I'm a master at this. It's because I have had to do a lot of work. And, if it worked for me, maybe it will work for at least one other person. And that's enough. Like, if one person sees a video where I'm talking about something that helped me and it helps them, that's it. Like,
well, as good as that is, let's help millions.
Yeah.
Let's help millions.
I like millions.
You're going on the podcast circuit right now, working with that one. We're going to hear your story probably many, many more times, but not only that, different perspectives, because I think that when you get with different hosts, they're going to bring different things out of you, which is cool. And you're going to get really, really well known for this and helping a lot of people. So one person, obviously that's enough, but let's shoot for millions.
Let's do it.
Melissa, you're amazing. I'm humbled that you, like I said, allowed us to work for you and came back here to do this live with me on That One podcast tour. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
We're
Great
good.
job. Great job.
Oh, the tattoo part was good. I've never been asked about that. Oh yeah, one more thing. What makes me that one is that I've been to the bottom and I've been able to come out of it. So I know how hard it can get. And I've come out of it for one reason, to share my story, to transmute any difficulties that I have faced into something beautiful, hoping that what I share can be of value to others.